Now we have next topic. This is called host security. In this topic, we have endpoint protection. We have privileged access workstation. We have virtual machine templates and remote access management, update management. We'll talk about disk encryptions, Microsoft Defender, and security center recommendations. If you recall, the first slide which we have seen, let me take you back to it so that you will get the idea about it. If you have noticed, the first slide which we discussed, this one was about defense in depth. In that chapter, we were in this particular diagram, we were talking about a layered approach. So according to that, we discussed about perimeter security, and there we were talking about DDoS and firewall. Then we discussed about network layer. In network, we were talking about segmentation using subnets, which is called microsegmentation. We discussed about NSGs. We discussed about ASG service. Now we are talking about the compute, because within your network, your compute services are lying, like your VM, your PaaS compute, your IaaS compute, your containers. So how exactly we protect those compute services? How to achieve the host security? So this would be the third chapter where we are talking about the host security, and there we'll be talking about the endpoint protection. So I'll just take you back to that particular chapter, and we are now on the third topic. Okay, this is the one. Let's get started with the first topic. Here we are talking about endpoint protection. Now think about it. If you have your laptop with you, how do you protect your laptop? How do you protect your individual devices? You may have workstations, you may have individual machines, you may have your personal computer, you may have your servers. How do you protect those individual endpoints? Now, maybe you are installing some sort of, you can say, anti-malware solution. Maybe you are installing any antivirus over there. You are installing any anti-malware solution, isn't it? So what we actually do in the if we talk about specific endpoint, how to protect that endpoint, we need to install an endpoint protection solution over there. Now it could be any protection anti-malware solution. I'll show you the option how to install the endpoints, and later after installing it using Defender, I can monitor the solution. We can monitor that later. So it needs to be installed on individual machines. Then using these kind of you can say monitoring solution, we can understand the health issues. How can it be? How can it? We can resolve them. That can be checked using this Defender service. Because this Defender service will further give you the recommendations. Defender service will recommend the endpoint protection. Will check the endpoints, and they will check the status of each machine where the endpoint was installed, and they will check that whether your machine is healthy or not. Endpoint is actually that interact directly with the users, and these endpoint systems are typically vulnerable to security attacks. Overall, after that, we need to install the Defender tool. Using the Defender tool, we can harden the security, we get the recommendations, and we can maintain the security posture of our environment. So there are various modules that needs to be installed. Next, we have privileged access device strategy. Here we are talking about in your organization, maybe you are the administrators, and it may be possible you do have privileged devices, you do have privileged access for those devices. Maybe you are you do have permission to access the sensitive services. So how exactly what type of strategy we follow with the devices? For example, your company wants to buy the laptops. Your company wants to provide the devices to their users, to their employees. So whenever we buy the hardware, we don't buy the hardware from any regular vendor. We actually buy the devices from the OEM, from the original vendor, from the authorized vendor. So if you are buying it from unauthorized vendor, there may be, you can say, it may be possible that there may be something physically attached to your system, and that may further create impact on your environment. So we have to make sure that the devices need to buy from the trusted vendor, authorized vendor, because those authorized vendors have their, you can say, autopilot program, and using that autopilot program, we can make sure that the devices have gone through all the proper root of trust. So this is called root of trust. Root of trust means these devices fulfill all these basic prerequisites that leads to security. Like your devices should have TPM enabled, TPM 2.0 enabled. It is something enabled along with your firmware, maybe BIOS with maybe with UEFI. It should be UEFI because UEFI is something more secure. It has a secure boot option. BitLocker device encryption comes along with that. What type of firmware, what type of drivers are there? Your machine should have proper updates. Windows Hello needs to be integrated, DMA, System Guard, modern, you can say, standby. This is called a checklist of root of trust. So always make sure that whenever you are looking for devices, those devices needs to be used by a user. You're buying it from a authorized vendor. Next, we have this privileged workstation. Those are called core workstations. So it may be possible that you do have your users, and your users are, you can say, your users access those devices to access those specific services. Those services may be quite sensitive services. So here we need to understand that what kind of security assurance, whenever they launch the session, we have to make sure that they are launching the session from a secure, you can say, with a secure way, and all the assets needs to be controlled. All the assets needs to be secured. So you may have heard about the jump box, the jump servers, because it may be possible on those devices there may be attacks take place from the internet. The threat vector, phishing attacks, different type of vulnerabilities can be there. So we try to avoid such vulnerabilities. We try to make that system secure. In that case, what we do, we actually allow the privileged access to those workstations, limited access. Because what if any attackers get the access on that device or that particular workstation, which that will create impact on the entire business. So we always make sure that there we have authorized privileged access, and these devices needs to be accessed behind the jump box. So we should have an appropriate account, because there we have highly value assets. Administrator uh, needs to access these assets, and we need to make sure that those accounts need to be protected further. In Azure, we have a service called Bastion service that act as a jump box. And along with that, we have lots of ways to allow the privileged access across these workstations. Next, we have VM template, virtual machine template. Now, why we are talking about templates over here? If we are talking about host security, what we need to do with the template? Because whenever you prepare your virtualized environment, when you create your VMs, your compute services, how exactly you are setting it up? For example, you are using GUI, graphical interface. Are you going to create a VM one by one? Maybe in your environment, there is a requirement of setting up 40 VMs together. So in that case, you won't be use the portal or GUI to create the virtual machine. You may be using infrastructure code. Infrastructure is a code service. In Azure, we have ARM templates. We have JSON files or ARM templates are there. Using the template, we can create our resources. So these templates are infrastructure as a code service. Like I said, I want to create 20 VMs together, 20 VM in one go. So what we'll be creating, we'll create a template for that. And because Azure only understands JSON, so we can prepare a JSON template. This JSON template is having declarative syntaxes. We have actually two types of syntaxes, imperative and declarative. When I say imperative, that means each and every value an asset needs to be defined by you. You are going to define each and every attributes. But in declarative, there are few things, there are few parameters which you have to define. Remaining parameters will be defined already. The only necessary parameter needs to be defined in ARM template because it uses a declarative approach. So same template is gonna work across various environments, development, production, quality. It's going to work everywhere. Express requirement through code using a JSON. Promote reuse because these templates can be shared. Modulars and can be linked. These templates can be linked together. You can link multiple templates together. And these templates simplify the orchestration. That make your environment, you can say, you just have your codes which you have to run again and again, and that actually simplify the orchestration for you. So let me show you how does it look like. You may have seen these templates. It's not only for VM. Whatever you are creating, you can use the ARM template for that. For example, I have my VNet as an example. If I want to set up another network with same kind of parameters, with same values, will I create the same network manually or can I grab the code of this existing network? In that case, you can go to the automation section and click on export templates from there. Now it is generating the template, and here you will find they will bring the template of your existing resource, which you can download, which you can reuse, which you can share with anyone else. That is called export template option. It will take time, and you can see right now. Here we go. I can see the template of my existing resource where this is available in JSON. This is a JSON format. And it uses a key value pair syntax. This is the key, and that's the value. So if you want to download it, you can. If you want to visualize that environment, how does it look like? A diagrammatic representation that you can see. You want to deploy that all together, then and there. You want to save it to the library. You want to download it and maybe send it to someone else. That is also possible. So these are the options that you get along with the resources. Same applicable to your virtual machines. Next we have, so we always prefer virtual machine templates to create your multiple hosts or multiple compute services. And not only for VMs, whenever we create any particular service, whenever we create any specific service, we actually use these templates. This is something, these infrastructure codes are used across various environments. Now, this is the next topic called remote access management. And let me just open with this presentation, then we can continue. Here we are talking about taking the remote access of your resources. Whenever it comes to any compute, maybe it's a virtual machine, it's your Azure VM, any type of VM, anywhere it is hosted, how you are going to take a remote access of it. Think about the in general, that what is the general way of taking the remote access of your resources. We ideally take RDP, right? Remote Desktop Protocol. Whenever it comes to Windows VM, or whenever it comes to Linux VM, we go with the SSH, Secure Shell Protocol. These are the two ideal ways of taking a remote access. Now, if I talk about RDP, think about RDP only. And in RDP, what we need to do to take the remote access, you need to allow the public IP for your resource, and you have to allow port 3389. But exposing management port is something not recommended. Then we have, it's not a good practice to allow the RDP. If it is important, then we do have some other ways to allow the access. Next, we have Secure Shell Protocol, SSH. When it comes to your Linux machine, we need to enable port 22, and you need some other agents as well, like Putty, PuttyGen. These are the other tools which you need to generate the keys. So these are the two commonly used methods to take a remote session. Maybe you have some services where you can configure the netting. And at last, we have this Bastion service. Bastion subnet for RDP SSH to the portal over SSL. So Bastion is a service which is a managed service on the cloud. It's a PaaS offering, and it's like a jump server that we have in on-premises. So actually, in this Bastion service, first of all, as it's a managed service, you have to first prepare a dedicated subnet. So you can see in this network, this is a Azure Bastion subnet. It's a dedicated subnet to keep your Bastion host. Now you have 3 VMs on your backend as a target, for which you want to take a remote access. So we do not directly expose these VMs, these VM A, B, C over the internet. What we are doing through the Bastion, we are taking the remote access of this machine through over TLS, and only from the portal it's possible to take the remote access. That means these VMs are not exposed over the public internet. No public IP is required, no PIP is required for this VM. So we are taking remote RDP SSH of these VM over TLS through the Azure portal. If you recall, I told you about hub and spoke environment. There you have seen Bastion environment or Bastion host. So this, you can say this Bastion service, we always keep in a hub environment because that can be shared across your many spoke networks. So it's one of the managed service. Along with that, it's a costly service. There would be a fixed cost which you have to pay. Along with that, there would be the cost based on, you can say, egress, based on the consumption you are going to pay for that. So that's why to make your environment cost effective, we keep this Bastion in a dedicated subnet. or we keep this in a dedicated network so that it can be shared. It can make your environment cost effective. Let me quickly show you this on the portal, then we can talk about the next topic. This is my portal, and here you can set up the Bastion service separately. This is called Bastion host. It's actually offer a web-based access to your virtual machine, which lies in your network. Bastion allow a web-based RDP access to your VNet VM. Do remember that Bastion is something we are creating inside the network. So when you provide this Bastion service configurations, you have to provide that what type of tier do you need, standard tier or basic tier. Now see, when you go with the standard tier, you are only allowed to use 2 instance count. You can't increase it. Limited counts are there. It says Bastion scalable host is not available on basic SKU. Scalability is not there. If you want the scalable environment, you want more instance on the background, up to 50. That comes along with the standard. I think up to 50. Yeah, up to 50 instances are there. But as you are going up to these many of instances, what you have to do, if you see, they talk about the dedicated subnet called Azure Bastion subnet. And they say that in the subnet, you should have sufficient IP address to scale out. So what we have to do is we have to create a dedicated subnet and make sure provide the CIDR that should be at least 26 or maybe 25, 24, more than that. For example, I'm using few, let's say I'm using up to 10 instances. In that case, you create a network, provide the public IP to it. But when you choose your network, you need a dedicated subnet as well. You see, it says associate your Bastion with a dedicated subnet called Azure Bastion subnet. So they'll take you back to the subnet configuration. Prepare a subnet called Azure Bastion subnet like this. As per Microsoft, this should be 26. You can use anything, but make sure at least use 26 for that. I won't be able to create it because my subscription is, I do not have any right permission on the subscription level. And this Bastion will take time as well. But subnet is something must, which is required while setting up the Bastion server. So once you have a dedicated subnet, then you provide the public IP to it. It's a host, it's a jump host. So you provide a public IP, whichever public IP you create, and then you are going to create it. Most of the PaaS offering take time. This is going to take another 10-15 minutes to create. So once this Bastion host get created, then we can take a remote session of our VM. I mean, let me quickly check that do I have any VM or not. There is no VM. Once you and once your Bastion get enabled, then you can take a remote session of it using the Bastion. So that was one way of taking the remote management or secure remote access host or jump server. Next, we have disk encryption. Disk encryption means here we are talking about within your VM, whatever data you have your disk over there, and that belongs to a storage account. Your VM may contain different type of data. Maybe you have your OS disk, you have your data disk, you may have multiple disks over there. So when you create a VM, there would be a C drive, which is operating system disk. There would be a D drive, which is for temporary storage. And there you can have other drives for data storage. But all these disks are lying in a storage account. To protect my VM, I have to take care of my disk as well. Because disk is containing sensitive information. So the moment you create your VM, along with that, Microsoft going to provide encryption to those disks, provide encryption to the OS disk and data disk. By default, they're gonna provide you ADE, Azure Disk Encryption. which is taken care by Microsoft. If you do not want to use their default encryption, then you can use your custom encryption. That is also possible. And there we use Windows VM BitLocker, we use Windows VM. For Linux VM, we use Encrypt. These are the, you can say, encryptions that we use for these VMs. That comes along with the VM. But if you want to use your own, you can. These are like a keys you may have seen about BitLockers. Same for Linux, we use Encrypt. Sometimes you are not okay with the default encryption. You want to use your own encryption. In that case, you can go with the customer managed vault. So how to get these things? When you start setting up your VM, you get a chance to define the disk detail. That's the one. So when you define the disk, it says your Azure disk storage encryption automatically encrypt your data and store in your managed disk. That means this will be encrypted automatically. And you see right here for your OS disk, the encryption would be the key management is PMK, platform managed key. This would be managed by platform by Microsoft itself. If you do not want to use PMK, then you can go with your CMK, customer managed key. If you have your own key, you can use that. If you want to use both PMK and CMK, that is also possible. But by default, there would be PMK. For example, I want to have my own data disk. And when you set up your own data disk, at that point of time, they also ask you for encryption. What kind of encryption do you want? PMK, CMK, or both? So this would be the, you can say, compute level protection, which we are using, or that we use by these disks. This is called disk encryption. Same goes for your storage account. Whatever storage account you have, that storage account is also encrypted by Microsoft. That is encrypted by SSE, storage service encryption, and it's a default encryption having AES 256-bit encryption, which is taken care by Microsoft. If you want to use your own encryption, then in that case, you can go with your own customer managed key. So this is the diagram. This is the chart where it shows the differences between all these keys. They have shown the comparison between SSE. Now understand the difference. We have SSE called storage service encryption. It's a part of storage account. It comes along with the storage account. ADE comes along with the disk. And there would be another encryption at host level, which is taken care by Microsoft. So you have three types of encryptions. SSE AD is enabled by Microsoft itself. So the first one is says encryption at rest. All your OS data disk will be encrypted by default. Encryption at rest with PMK, SSE plus PMK, which is taken care by Microsoft. That is applicable to OS data disk by default. If I use SSE plus PMK, again, that would be at rest if it's possible. For ADE, it's allowed. For encryption at host, it's allowed. But when you talk about encryption for your temp disk means your D drive. SSE PMK and SSE CMK doesn't offer this temp disk encryption. For swap operation, we use, or for page operations, we use paging file, we use temp disk. So this disk is not encrypted by SSE PMK, SSE CMK. It comes along with your ADE and encryption at host. When it comes to encryption of caches, again with PMK, CMK, it's not possible. With ADE and encryption at host, it's possible. So you need to understand the differences. Another important thing is control. Who is having the control? Take a look on this one. If I talk about the customer control of keys, in terms of SSE PMK, the control will be customer have no control because this is something managed by platform by Microsoft. Obviously, customer has no such control. If I talk about encryption at rest, PMK, Customer has control on it because this is the key generated by customer. ADE and encryption at host, who is having the control, that you can see right here. So make sure you know about that the control, who is having the control, who is not having the control. And can I see the status in Defender for Cloud Disk? You can see the status right there. So these are the comparisons between the three disks which we have, disk encryptions which we have on cloud. Next, we have a service called Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint means here we are talking about a dedicated plan. See, whenever it comes to Defender has various, you can say, it's a suite. There you have various plans. But if I talk about the endpoints, endpoint means I'm talking about devices. I'm talking about different platforms. I'm talking about Android device, Mac device, iOS, Linux, servers, Windows 7, Windows 8. You may have different type of platform because sometimes your company allow you to use different type of Windows machine at home. You are allowed to use your personal devices. Maybe they have a concept of BYOD. So you're allowed to use any devices maybe. So how this endpoint is going to include, you can say your different devices, how it's going to protect your different devices. First of all, you have to buy the right plan for Defender for Endpoint. We have various plans. Plan 1, Plan 2 for Defender for Endpoint. It's a part of M365 Defender. And using this particular endpoint plan, there would be a vulnerability management that is added, and you'll get to know that you will get to know the behavior-based environment. You can say in this particular plan, if I talk about Windows 10, there we have some behavioral sensors, behavior-based sensors. They actually check the behavior of your machine. It comes along with Windows 10. These sensors actually collect and process the behavioral signal from the operating system. They actually collect the data, and that they actually send the data to Defender for Endpoint. There will be different type of analytics that you can run, and along with that, this Defender for Endpoint also has threat intelligence. There would be hunting, there would be analytics that you can run using the partner solutions. There would be different type of tools that you can integrate. Different procedure, different techniques can be used over there to collect the data. So we have various, you can say, things which comes under Defender for Endpoint. Like we have EDR, we do have attack surface reductions. That's a part of your plan. Which plan you have? We have vulnerability management. So this Defender application control mitigates the attack from spyware, adware, rootkit virus, keyloggers by restricting the applications that user can run and the code that run in the system or kernel. So it has lots of capabilities. It uses a risk-based approach, a modern risk-based approach to discover different type of, you can say, vulnerabilities. It runs some assessment. It runs the remediation across the endpoints as well. If any type of misconfigurations are there across these devices, that can be run by this Defender, that can be detected by this Defender. So overall, Defender for Endpoint can cater the security posture and it reduces the risk of across these different devices. So make sure you choose the right plan of Defender for Endpoint for your environment. It's like a next generation protection using this Defender for Endpoint. So that can be achieved using this Defender for Endpoint plan. After that, we have another service called, as we were talking about Defender, we have another service called ASB, Security Benchmark, ASB. Yesterday, when we started the session, I was talking about the policies. And at that point of time, we have seen some policies applied on my environment. So whenever you go with Defender for Cloud Plan, Microsoft applies some sort of policies in your environment. Those are called benchmarks, security benchmark. Benchmark means it's a set of standards which is being applied by Microsoft, which is being suggested by Microsoft. Now it's your call whether you want to apply them or not. By default, they will be applied, but you can deny it for that. So actually, Microsoft have partnership with the CIS, Center of Internet Security. And if you go for that, you will find a baseline, you will see a standard guideline that you want to apply in your environment as per your company standard. Maybe you want to push those standards in your environment. So let me show you this, what exactly that means. I'm taking you back to my portal. Let me take you back to the policies and go to the definitions. Even you can take a look on the overview as well. You can go for the overview, and if you take a look, I do have some ASC default. What does that mean? It's the Azure Security Center default policies. It's a default set of standards. Same way, if you want to check those basic standards, ASBs, then you need to go for Defender for Cloud. And there you can see that what type of benchmarks are there, what type of standards are there. So you can go to the environment settings in your environment, or you can go to regulatory compliance. There you can see that what type of standards have been applied. This is the one, Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark, MS ASB or MSB. It has different versions of it. It says the cloud benchmark is applied. It's already applied to my subscription. So what it is a recommendation of Defender for Cloud. And these standards about network, about identity, about data protection, about compute across various services, NS, IM, PA, DP, these are the dedicated standard for dedicated category. If I talk about network security, I can see these are the network security controls that they have suggested. So this is the recommendation of Microsoft. And along with that, you can see how exactly we are going to control it. Who gonna control it? Microsoft. MS means Microsoft is responsible, or C means customer is responsible. For example, if I go with this one, establish network segmentation boundaries. They are talking about subnetting. So what are my actions? What I need to do? And this recommendation falls under NS1, Network Security Standard 1. It's a shared responsibility. Microsoft and customer both are responsible for that. So you go for your actions. These are the actions which we can take on the across the environment. Like adaptive network hardening recommendation should be applied on the internet facing VMs. Subnet, whichever you are creating, should be associated with the word NSGs. What needs to be done by Microsoft? These are Microsoft. They haven't shown them, but here you will get to know what actions which they need to take. So this is just one example. These are the guidelines. This is the set of policy which they are applying across your environment. Maybe you are saying that you don't want to apply it. You don't want to apply these Microsoft security benchmark. That's fine. You can just say no for that, and you can apply your own. You can apply your own standards. You can apply your own guidelines. So you can see currently I just have Microsoft security benchmark. Out of that, 49 of 63 PaaS control. We do not have any additional standard currently monitored. So you can add them. You can add more compliance policies over there. So this is possible. It's possible using Defender for Cloud. Automatically it will be there. Next is Security Center recommendation or Defender for Cloud recommendations. Don't get confused with the name. Like I told you earlier, the tool, the name that has been changed. The service is called Defender for Cloud, and these are the recommendations which you get over there. As they have applied multiple policies, along with that, they give you many standards. They give you many recommendations. If you take a look on the first recommendations, the first one, it says secure management score. The score for this recommendation is 8. We have no points, or we have how much resources are healthy, how many are non-healthy, that you can see. Apply the system update. So you need to expand them, and then you will get to know that how many have been followed by me and what needs to be followed next. Along with that, there are many filters that you can see. Using these filters, I can figure out, I can focus on one particular recommendations, and I can improve my score. So they actually try to count your score. They try to tell you the progress of your security portion of your environment, that how much secure your environment is. And with that, this chapter have been completed. This was the last topic, security center. With that, we have